Hello Raptors fans! I'm back in the new year and ready to break down the play of the Toronto Raptors, giving my opinion on the good, the bad, and the downright ugly things happening on the court so far. Analyzing what the Raptors are doing wrong can be tough to hear, but rest assured I'll try to soften the blow and provide plenty of data to back up my analysis. Let's dive in. Speaking of softening the blow, let's start with the good. A nice surprise this season has been the play of backup big man Chris Boucher. Signed to a bargain contract in the offseason, he's been one of the only productive players off of the bench for the Raptors. Boucher is one of the best interior scorers on the Raptors. He provides a really nice target for lob passes, as he has the length to catch the ball above defenders, and he's agile around the basket, able to go around defenders and finish, which somewhat makes up for his very thin frame. Boucher is also improving on an issue that he had prior to this season, which was that almost every time he caught the ball past the three-point arc, he would chuck up a three, oblivious to details like whether it was a good shot, the time remaining on the clock, whether rebounders were in position, or even if there was a better shooter nearby that was more open than him. Curbing this tendency has resulted in less frustrating moments and a slight uptick in his three-point percentage. Whether this will continue is up for debate, but the early results have been encouraging. In terms of raw statistical output, the per minute and advanced stats last season for Boucher indicated that he was an extremely productive player, so it's not exactly surprising that with his bigger role, he's producing a lot more. He's a great weak side shot blocker, he's really good on the offensive glass, but he's still a little limited as a defender, in that he can struggle against large, physically strong centers, and he often has to jump and block shots rather than just playing big and putting his body on people. Nurse's solution has been to play him alongside Len and Baynes at the power forward at least some of the time, and he's looked pretty good there too. I think that mixing minutes between power forward and center is the way forward for Boucher, and I'm excited to see more of him. Another huge positive for the Raptors has been the scoring output of Fred VanVleet. VanVleet was the Raptors' biggest signing in the offseason, and he's come out firing in the first 6 games of the season, scoring 22 points and banging almost 4 threes a game. Not only has Fred been one of the only Raptors scoring well, he's also remained one of the Raptors' most effective perimeter defenders. The only caveat to the praise he deserves is the fact that he definitely thrives as the off-ball guard rather than the guy initiating the offense. He's at his best when he's catching the ball and shooting, generating a shot for himself, or slashing to the basket. Still, it's good to see that Fred appears to have taken the step everyone was hoping for. Unfortunately for the Raptors, there's only one more section in the good part of this video, and that's been the play of Kyle Lowry. Kyle, as most people have noticed, is the linchpin of the Raptors offense, and is one of the only reasons that the Raptors have been able to put the ball into the basket this season. Fred VanVleet, for all of his excellent attributes, has not yet shown the ability to run the point. With Gasol's departure, secondary playmaking has largely been absent, meaning that there have been huge issues manufacturing scoring opportunities while Kyle is off the floor. Kyle is a known quantity. He's the greatest Raptor ever, yet he's having a difficult time being the only consistently productive player on the roster. He needs help. Now we enter the bad section. First off, Aron Baynes. Aron Baynes has not lived up to expectations. I'll come clean, as I thought that this was a great pickup in the offseason. I thought that the mixture of Baynes' three-point shooting, crafty defense, and strength would fit perfectly on the Raptors roster. Unfortunately, those qualities have failed to materialize so far in a Raptors jersey. Baynes has not shot the ball well at all, only connecting on 20% of his threes, but I think that the more concerning aspect of his play so far has been his defense. While I don't think that anyone expected Baynes to come in and be a Gobert-level rim protector, I think that most people, myself included, believed Baynes could at the very least provide good rotations, positioning in the paint, hit people with some hard fouls, and, generally do what you expect a center to do on defense. Whether he's still getting accustomed to the Raptors' defensive system, or the communication isn't there yet, or whatever, Baynes has simply not been the paint protector that the Raptors have needed him to be so far this season. The main problem is that he's not really contesting enough shots around the rim. While Baynes is on the floor, opposing ball handlers have been driving to the rim and getting relatively easy layups or passes to opposing big men due to a lack of interior defensive pressure. That's not good. I do think that Baynes' abysmal three-point shooting isn't going to last, and his percentages will return to a level that will force teams to guard him beyond the arc. I also expect his defense to get better as he learns the system. With that being said, I'm not very optimistic that Baynes will be the slam dunk acquisition I assumed he would be in the offseason. I think if the Raptors don't turn the ship around soon, and Baynes continues to be a negative, he'll be sent to the bench in place of either Alex Len or Chris Boucher. The next part of the puzzle has been Pascal Siakam's struggles. After a very disappointing performance in the bubble, Pascal Siakam had an opportunity to prove the doubters wrong by coming out hot to start the regular season. Unfortunately for him and the Raptors, he has not had the return to form that many were hoping for. In terms of what's wrong, the biggest issue I see is his difficulty getting past his man in one-on-one situations, and as a result, he's forced to finish at the basket through and around contests. This isn't exactly a new phenomenon. Siakam, in ISO situations last season, had a points per possession of only .88, which is on the low end for someone who ISOs as much as he does. This season, Siakam has had difficulty finishing inside, scoring on only 42% of his shots inside 8 feet of the basket. And I think the main culprit is the lack of easy baskets combined with the aforementioned inability to get past his man in one-on-one situations. As a result, I think the best way to improve Siakam's play is to get him shots at the basket where he's not the primary ball handler, which is easier said than done. The Raptors need to find Siakam moving off of the ball on cuts, in transition, as the screener in the pick and roll, and also find other ways to get him chances at the rim that don't involve him trying to beat his man off the dribble. He's also been surprisingly good in the mid-range, taking and making a lot more shots there than in previous seasons, so that could be an element that expands his scoring package and perhaps forces defenders to play him a bit tighter. Another big issue for Siakam is the suspension from the team that he faced for walking to the locker room before the game had ended. The fact that the team won its only game during his suspension adds to the bad vibes. It's very messy, and there are probably issues with team chemistry, and that leads pretty well into the ugly section of this video. The first ugly thing we'll be looking at today is Nick Nurse's rotation. Rotations are probably the easiest thing to complain about in basketball. Even if your team is winning every game, there will be a lot of people bemoaning that their favorite players aren't seeing enough playing time, rookies are being shafted, etc., etc. When your team is losing games, you can amplify those complaints by about 1 billion. While complaining about rotations is common and often unfair to the coach, I do think that there are big problems in this area for Nick Nurse. The two issues that you see complained about most often online are that Nick Nurse isn't playing Malachi Flynn enough, and that the backup wing and guard rotation is in a constant state of flux. Stanley Johnson has been seeing significant minutes off the bench. Yuta Watanabe is on the floor for long stretches and then absent the next game. Matt Thomas was the Raptors' first guard off the bench early in the season and then hasn't played at all. Paul Watson Jr., a guy I think has shown a lot of promise in the Raptors farm system, has played a total of 6 minutes in 6 games. I think the biggest criticism is that Malachi Flynn has barely played in the regular season. Despite being impressive in the preseason, Malachi Flynn saw virtually no time at all in the first 5 games, but then was the first guard off the bench in the embarrassing loss to the Boston Celtics. I wrote on Twitter that I thought that it was unfair from an expectations point of view to have Malachi Flynn not play at all, especially through these losses, as Raptors fans would immortalize him as the magic elixir that would cure all of the Raptors' woes. That obviously didn't happen in the game versus the Celtics, and you have to wonder if the strange sub-patterns of Nick Nurse could have rattled his confidence. If Flynn manages to play up to his theoretical skill set, it could be a breath of fresh air in the second unit, which is missing Kyle Lowry's playmaking. I'm curious whether this is just a one-off experiment by Nurse as a kind of I told you so, or whether Flynn will continue to see more minutes as the season progresses. This leads directly to the next point on the ugly list, the play of Norman Powell. Powell is receiving major minutes at the guard spot for the Raptors, playing in front of many other guards on the Raptors roster, so Raptors fans should be pretty aware of the struggles he's having. Norman Powell had a career year last season, and in the offseason I was saying that with the guard depth the Raptors had, his contract situation, the fact that he's had big ups and downs in his career so far, it might be time to cash in and send him out for pieces that fit the roster a bit better. His play so far this season seems to indicate this was the way to go, as he's been very inefficient and has had big mental lapses on defense, including a pivotal defensive mistake late in the game versus the Pelicans, where he unnecessarily reached in and fouled on a crucial defensive possession. Mental lapses aren't just an issue on defense either. After last season, where he appeared to figure out how to be a consistently positive player off the bench, he's right back to the issues he was facing earlier in his career. Knowing when to drive and when to move the ball, driving into multiple defenders and turning the ball over, and simply taking bad shots. Compounding this, I assume that the value Powell might have had prior to the season has largely evaporated, as his carriage has turned back into a pumpkin, and I doubt other front offices view him as a valuable asset anymore. Lastly, we'll be looking at the ugliness that is the Raptors' offense and the Raptors' record. The Raptors have the second least efficient and thus the second worst offense in the entire league, and this offensive ineptitude has been the primary culprit in them losing 5 of their first 6 games. While the Raptors maybe aren't the defensive juggernaut they were last season, mostly due to them lacking rim protection, the defense isn't the biggest issue. The Raptors are 9th in D rating, which certainly could be improved, but is leagues better than their 29th ranked offensive rating. The same problem that they faced in the bubble, long scoring droughts, has resurfaced this season. The biggest problem on offense is that the Raptors do not have a reliable ISO threat, and they don't have enough scoring at the rim. Fred is a great shooter and has had big scoring games already, but he's still not a great scorer at the rim, only hitting 55% of his shots there. As I mentioned earlier, Siakam has been pretty poor around the basket, scoring on only 42% of his attempts within 8 feet. The only player in the starting lineup who's any good at getting to and finishing at the rim is 34-year-old Kyle Lowry, who's shooting a very nice 69% within 3 feet of the basket. The result is that the Raptors live and die by the 3, which explains the scoring feasts and famines. The Raptors have been up by double digits in every single game they've played this season, and then they go on prolonged scoring droughts that squander those leads. Why? The three-point shot is high variance. The Raptors are number 1 in the league in three-point attempts and dead last in two-point attempts. That means that if the Raptors get hot from 3, they take a big lead. But then when they invariably go cold from 3, they cough that lead right back up. It's extremely ugly and they need to find a solution. And that's my analysis about the Raptors so far this season. I'll be honest, it hasn't looked great. The Raptors have a lot of different problems that are all working together to hurt them. Will they find a solution in time? Well, I suppose we'll have to see. Thanks for tuning in to Raptors Report. Please follow me on Twitter at Raptors Report, as I'm active there and I'll field any and all questions pertaining to the Raptors in the NBA. Also, please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I try to respond to all YouTube comments, so if you agree or disagree with my analysis, please let me know. I enjoy getting feedback. As always, thanks for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.